Hey, what's up guys? Node Investor here. Doing a weekly wrap up as we enter the weekend. We continue to see some positive action, some good movements in the crypto space. Today, some big movers, Bitcoin Cash moving, Basic Attention Token moving on some Coinbase news, and a handful of others. We'll take a look at the charts and kind of recap the week here, but I also want to point out some important levels to be watching on Bitcoin as we head into the weekend. Let's do a quick market recap here. Going to the $1 billion club here on the CoinMarketCap exchange. You can see for the week, it was actually a relatively flat week because we started off the week with a little bit of a shake-off, a big shakedown, which prices have since bounced back from. So in the last 24 hours, there's certainly some bigger percentage moves. You can see Bitcoin Cash almost 10% up today, Stellar having a nice move here today, and a handful of others, but for the week, relatively flat because of the initial way we started the week. If we go down to the next level and look at the $100 million to $1 billion club, you can see there's some big movers. Link continues to lead the way up. Basic Attention, again, we mentioned that, and a handful of others. So definitely starting to see some good movement. Not major moves across the board, but we have certainly seen plenty of double-digit gainers this week. And I don't want to jinx it, but crypto's starting to feel a little bit more exciting now. And that's a positive coming off of the very flat October that we had. You can see the Bitcoin dominance has remained relatively stable here in the low mid 50% range right now. We're at about 53%. And you can see here Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, Ripple, and all other alts just kind of pretty much in the same range that they have been for the last several weeks. If we go to the CoinMarketCap, you can see how flat the month of October was. It was the least volatile month that we had seen in almost 2 years, and that's following a pretty turbulent 2018. But the last couple of months, we've seen the valleys and the peaks starting to get smaller as the price continues to tighten and narrow up in the range. The volatility from a percentage basis that we saw in October was around 10% of the total price. The last time we saw such a narrow range for Bitcoin, you have to go back to 2016, both in September and in November of those years, where the prices were in the $600 range. And so it's been quite some time since we've seen such a relatively flat chart. And just keep in mind, these type of narrow price ranges don't generally last. So we're all kind of looking out for that next big move in Bitcoin. In the short run, prices are looking positive. We're starting to see some good momentum, but we are facing some resistance here near term, which I'll go over shortly. But all around, CoinMarketCap just kind of sitting tight right around that $200 billion mark. Not a whole lot of movement up or down here. You know, in the past, we've seen those big moves where CoinMarketCap goes up 20, $30 billion in a day and back down. And just the last couple of months have been really tight, but you can feel the pressure building. The prices are really starting to coil up, and it's going to be a big move when it finally does break out. So definitely something you want to keep an eye out here as we head into the last couple of months of the year. Before we get into the charts, just want to remind everybody real quickly, you can get more information at nodeinvestor.com. I am in the middle of signing up new members for our next month. We share ideas, we do trades, we talk about news and ICOs, share a lot of resources, and we also do some private live streams every week for the group where we do either educational stuff, trading, or just chart reviews. So check that out, nodeinvestor.com/training. There's a link to the insiders group and you can get more information there. Let's take a look at the chart. Starting off with Bitcoin, you can see this is on Bitstamp here. I'm going to kind of mix up the exchange a little bit, and you can see there's a couple of things I want to note here. When we had that big bullish reversal candle earlier in the week, prices consolidated and they pulled right back and formed a nice little consolidation pattern, let the moving averages catch up, never broke below support, which is good. And then we finally started to move higher yesterday, and now it's a little bit of a symmetrical pattern. You can see how prices are just starting to narrow and really coil up here. Let me move the lines there. And you can see how narrow that price range is starting to become. So definitely something I want to make note of here. We are bouncing right into the daily resistance level. On the 1 hour chart, it looks just fine. On the 4 hour chart, it looks good. And it could certainly break out either way. I'm taking a little bit of a cautionary measure and just moving up the stops as we head into the weekend. We have generally seen low liquidity, lower volume on the weekend, and they can move prices up very quickly or down very quickly. So something I'm keeping an eye on, and I'm just going to keep a tight stop until we can break above this range. The level I want to point out here on the daily chart, if you zoom in here, let me clear these lines for us real quick. If you zoom in here on the daily chart, you can see where there's two moving averages I want to make note of here. You can see the 22 on my chart and the 10 EMA on my chart. Prices have just been bouncing into these moving averages, and they're right in that range. We also have not been able to clear above this prior support, which broke down earlier in the week, and so far it's just been a bounce right into that zone. Like I said, on the short-term time, it looks good, it's holding up well, but if we're going to see a pullback, it would make sense that this is the zone where we start to see some profit taking. So I'm just getting a little bit cautious here is all, but there's not any sell signals yet, but certainly we have bounced right into that resistance. So this is really the first big test here following that move off the lows. Ideally, we want to see prices close above this range that it was in for a couple of weeks. That would really be positive. To see prices move above that would show confirmation and ultimately would make this leg down just turn into a big shakeout to reversal, which trapped some of the bears, and now we're seeing prices move higher. So that's what I want to see on Bitcoin. All around, still looking pretty good on the altcoin side of things, but just keep an eye on Bitcoin, because as we've seen in the past, if you do see a big move lower, that will certainly put the brakes on some of the moves that we're seeing in the altcoin market. But all in all, just watching that resistance as we bounce into the weekend. On the 4-hour chart, moving averages are starting to move north again. They're stacked positively, but I do want to see some volume come in if we do see a push higher. That would show some conviction behind the move and some confirmation to the upside. Taking a look at Ethereum, I mentioned this one in my last update as well, and I want to remind us of this because this is important here. I use this as a little bit of an indicator for how the overall altcoin market is doing, and you can see prices have been relatively flat versus Bitcoin, but they're really starting to narrow out here, and today we've seen some positive action. If we zoom into the 4-hour chart on ETH, you can see it's starting to outperform Bitcoin a little bit, starting to show some positive momentum. This is exactly what we want to see, especially for the altcoin market. It's going to bode well all around, showing some more strength coming into this market. And so I'm liking what I'm seeing. Prices are moving ahead of Bitcoin. We want to see some follow through, of course, in the daily chart. It's still below moving averages. It's just still trying to break out of this range, but it's holding up well. So keep an eye on this chart. This is one I'm definitely watching here near term. You're also seeing a little bit of outperformance from Litecoin BTC. If we go to that chart real quick, you can see here the last couple of days, it's been bouncing back with a little bit more than Bitcoin has, and so that's good to see. Seeing some outperformance on Litecoin and moving off the lows strongly here versus BTC. Bitcoin Cash, very strong day today, has been outperforming here for the last couple of days, and just really strong move up 10% today. And we were talking about this in the chat room earlier this week and talking about when is the pre-fork pump gonna begin for Bitcoin Cash, and it looks like it's starting. If you're not aware, there is a hard fork that is being talked about for Bitcoin Cash. Bitmain is also looking at their IPO, so there's some news coming in, and you're seeing a little bit of front running in anticipation of that here. And big volume coming in today here, so nice move in Bitcoin Cash, certainly moving out of range. You can see on the daily chart how strong that move is. See if it has some follow through again. This did have a big shakedown here a couple of weeks ago, and is just now starting to recover from that. And so on the way up, it's going to face some overhead resistance as it approaches that $500 range. So above that $500, that's where I'd be looking to pay attention here to see if it can get past that zone. But Bitcoin Cash certainly strong here today. Another one is Basic Attention Token. Now, it's been long rumored that it would be added to Coinbase. We have the Coinbase names, as I call them, the Coinbase 5, and something I've been holding for long term after they announced they were potentially looking to add them. We're seeing a big move here today. 30% move on this 1 hourly candle before it's pulling back here a little bit, but has just been building some momentum, showing a lot of relative strength here in the last couple of days. Many people were anticipating that this was going to be the next one added, and sure enough, we saw it finally added. You can see the big volume, and very typical type of action that we've seen here in many of the Coinbase names when they're added there, just the big volume spike. In sympathy with the movement in Basic Attention, you're seeing some of the other potential Coinbase additions moving well. As you can see, Cardano showing a nice little movement here today, some volume coming in on news of Basic Attention Token there. Stellar Lumens also moving strongly here. I did have a position on this one, and I took part of the position off. I was liking Stellar before, even, as it started to break below this. One of the folks in the group pointed this out, and we jumped on it here and had a nice little move. Just kind of sat tight for a few days, and then earlier just started moving. And then, of course, with the news of basic attention coming online with Coinbase, you saw Stellar moving on some good volume here. So very nice to see that action. I'm still holding a core position on that, but certainly taking some into that little pump there, as I expect some of these will settle out once some of the excitement wears off, if you will. Zcash is another one that's potentially being listed on Coinbase, and this one is testing resistance here right now. You can see it's putting in a little bit of a nice rounded base here on this 4-hour chart, finding a low, and then here today moving strongly on volume again in sympathy with some of the other names here and testing this resistance. So definitely keeping an eye on this one here. If it can get back above this, you can see it broke down from a little bit of a head and shoulder pattern here on this 4-hour chart, but didn't really see a lot of follow through the downside, just kind of rounding out a little bit of a base. If it can get back above this neckline, that will be positive, and the fact that a lot of volumes coming in here is good to see. Looking at a few of the bigger cap names here, you can see Neo showing some good strength yesterday, settling out here a little bit. If I go to that 1-hour chart, just consolidating nicely here and just trending higher. Definitely liking the action we're seeing in Neo. EOS was another one that's been moving here today, pulling in a little bit, just kind of resting and pausing. If you go to that 4-hour chart, you can see a little bit extended from the 10 EMA on that 4-hour. Putting in a little bit of a bull flag right now, right at resistance. You can see this one rallied right up to this point here. That's where it's pausing. Makes sense that you're seeing a little bit of a pause there, but so far it's a healthy consolidation, a healthy pause, and I'm going to be keeping an eye on this one here on that little bull flag that's forming on this 4-hour chart. If it can start to show some volume and upside momentum, this will be a big breakout. You can see this has been resistance for the whole month of October, and so it's testing it again, getting above that. There's not going to be a lot of resistance for quite some ways here, so definitely one I'm going to be watching here. Tron's been on the move as well, but you can see this one is bouncing right into this resistance level. Let me move the line here. You can see this move right here. Look at where the candle paused. It might be hard to see. There's a wick that takes it right to the line, and so it has rallied right up to that resistance level, pulling in a little bit. Again, also was a little extended from that 10 EMA on that 4-hour chart. Still looking positive, but it's always important to note when these bounce right into that resistance level, you got to get a little bit cautious there, because there is some profit taking that shows up right at those levels. But on the shorter term time frame, still making a series of higher lows, and so until that changes, still looking pretty good all around. Ripple, still got to keep an eye on this one. Look at how flat and tight that chart has become. This is the Ripple BTC chart, so it's basically been tracking the Bitcoin. It's been on par with Bitcoin. If you look at the USD pair of this one, pretty much the same general shape and pattern of the charts, but watching this one closely because this is really primed for a breakout. It's a good candidate to see this one move out. Like to see volume come in if it starts to push higher, so definitely liking this setup here, one to keep an eye on over the next few days. Stratus, if you remember this one, Stratus had a pretty good move last week, and again, this came on some news of partnership, and after that, it just kind of pulled back, really just fizzled out. But I was watching this one earlier this week and really making note of this break of that downtrend. Found a little bit of a low here finally, pulled right back to the breakout point, really. If you look at the low where that came right back to basically that breakout point, which was followed by that big move, and you can see it's fully retraced, that came right back. Now it's starting to break above this downtrend, so it's going to be one to watch, see if it can continue to get some momentum here. I'm looking at this pullback here as a potential secondary entry, but I want to see some more upside confirmation showing that this one's really getting ready to move again. If you go to the daily chart here, still looking pretty good all around. Big volume move a few days ago last week, pulled back, starting to edge higher, some volume coming in here again. Icon, another name that I'm watching versus BTC. Now, there's several altcoins that have very similar charts. The former big runners, the high visibility names, a lot of those that have since really pulled back deeply this year, and over the last couple of months have really started to build these long-term lows, and it's something I'm really watching here. If you zoom out, look at this chart of Icon. I mean, big dramatic fall that it's had, and since August has just been finding a low. And look at the last couple of months, just how flat and how small this is, especially relative to the last year's price history. You can see how this chart has just really become flat and narrow, and so breaking above some of these key resistance levels would really be positive, especially if volume starts coming in. And these are high potential names. I mean, you don't expect these to fully retrace to the prior highs. They certainly could, but even on bounce trades, those type of things, and these are the type of names I'm looking at for longer term holds. As this market begins to find a low, I'm looking at these type of bases, these big lows being established, and once I start to see some more upward momentum, I mean, just look at the potential for something like this, right? Moving up to just this prior resistance here, it's a good 20% move from the breakout points. And then getting up to the next major resistance point, you're looking at a near double at that point, 100% move, just getting back up to this prior base that broke down from. And there are many examples like this that you really got to start looking at, especially those names that were kind of the big projects, the high visibility names, and start doing the research. If there's projects that you think are going to be viable long term, some of those names that are going to be around for the long haul. My favorite are the platform protocol names, just because they have the highest potential. These are kind of the backbone of the blockchain ecosystem, and there's going to be dApps being built on top of these. And so names like Icon and Neo and Ontology and some of those, when I start seeing them really build these bases here, I'm really starting to get on high alert, starting to pay attention, because they have such potential from these lows over the long run. So certainly is something I'm keeping an eye on. And also from a trading perspective, I mean, they start to break resistance, makes for some high probability, high potential trades as well. So definitely something to be watching here. I thought I'd share this example. Icon's a really good example of a former name that has just really been beaten down, but is potentially finding a good long-term low here. So going back to the Bitcoin chart, here's the weekly chart. This is BTC USD on Coinbase, and you could just see here the last several weeks prices have just been getting very tight, very narrow. It's interesting to note that prices are basically back within the same range that they were a year ago in November of 2017. Obviously back then the range was much wider, we saw a lot more volatility, and here we are seeing a little bit of a consolidation, but the price range is certainly starting to narrow. The momentum has really died off and the pressure is building. And so as we head into November, it's going to be interesting to see which way the next big move is. October again was very low volatility, very flat, very similar to September, but October was even more so. And so I'm looking for a break of that pattern finally. Hopefully it's to the upside and we continue to see the excitement built back into this space. There's a lot of really positive fundamental things happening behind the scenes. Infrastructure is being built, and so the ecosystem is certainly moving forward. Crypto is continuing to grow and develop, and it's moving in the right direction. So all around, we're going to continue to see adoption. We're going to continue to see it become more mainstream as the years go by. But we may look back at this in a few years and say, hey, maybe that was the low. That was the big accumulation zone that was happening. And these small $300, $500 wiggles that are very big moves for us now may seem really tiny someday. So just wanted to bring that update, guys. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you watching as always. Until next time, take care, everyone.